There are stories about crime that feel like explosions. And then there are stories about crime that feel like a door slowly closing behind you. The Godfather is not just about men with guns, secret meetings, and blood in the streets. It is about something colder, older, and more frightening. It is about the way a family can become a kingdom. The way love can become control. The way protection can become ownership. And the way one quiet son, who once believed he could escape the shadow of his father, slowly becomes the very shadow everyone else fears. At first, it looks like a story about power. But stay with it long enough, and you begin to realize the truth. It is a story about inheritance. Not money. Not property. Not even a criminal empire. It is about inheriting a wound. A father builds a world because the outside world failed him. He teaches his children that justice is not something you ask for. It is something you arrange. He creates a private nation inside America with its own laws, punishments, favors, debts, rituals, and gods. And at the center of that nation sits one man, Don Vito Corleone. He does not shout. He does not need to. His silence is louder than another man's rage. He understands that fear is useful, but respect lasts longer. He knows that violence is most powerful when it is hidden behind courtesy. He knows that a soft voice, spoken at the right moment, can make men tremble more than a threat screamed across a room. And yet, the most dangerous thing about Don Corleone is not his criminal genius. It is his tenderness. Because he loves his family. Deeply. Completely. Perhaps even sincerely. And that is what makes the story so tragic. This is the darkness at the heart of The Godfather. Love and violence are not opposites. In this world, they sit at the same table. They drink from the same glass. They speak the same language. A father may kiss his son on the cheek in the morning and order a death by evening. A brother may risk everything for blood loyalty, then destroy himself because he cannot control his anger. A husband may be welcomed into the family, but never trusted with its soul. And a young man named Michael may sit outside it all, watching, judging, believing he is different. But destiny has patience. And the family always waits. The story begins in celebration, but even celebration has shadows. A wedding is unfolding. Music, food, laughter, relatives, old friends, favors wrapped in smiles. The Corleone home becomes a stage where the family's public warmth and private power are displayed at the same time. Guests arrive not only to honor the bride, but to be seen honoring the father. They bring gifts. They bring respect. Some bring desperation. This is not just a wedding. It is a court. And Don Vito is receiving petitions. In ordinary society, people call lawyers, banks, police, officials. In the Corleone world, they come to the Don. They come because the official world has disappointed them. They come because the law is slow, expensive, blind, or already bought. They come because pain makes people practical. They come because humiliation demands an answer. And the Don listens. He listens like a priest, a judge, and a businessman all at once. He does not simply grant favors. He collects souls. Not with cruelty at first. Not with greed. But with the calm patience of a man who understands that gratitude is a currency stronger than cash. A baker wants to keep a young man in America. A grieving father wants justice for his injured daughter. A famous singer wants his career restored. Each request seems different, but all of them reveal the same truth. Don Corleone has built a system where people who feel powerless can feel protected. That is the seduction of his power. He does what institutions fail to do. He makes people feel seen. But every favor has a shadow attached to it. Every rescued man becomes part of the Don's invisible army. Every debt becomes a thread. And one day, when enough threads are tied together, a quiet old man can pull them and move the world. This is why The Godfather feels so unsettling. It does not present evil as chaos. It presents evil as order. A warm house. A family meal. A handshake. A promise. A wedding song floating over a garden while, behind closed doors, men discuss pain, loyalty, and punishment. And sitting at the edge of this world is Michael Corleone. He is young, composed, decorated by war, and determined to appear separate from his father's business. He has served in the military. He has lived among Americans outside the old neighborhood. He brings with him Kay, a woman from another world, a symbol of the life he thinks he has chosen. Michael is not loud like his brother Sonny. He is not uncertain like Fredo. He does not need to prove himself in every room. That is what makes him dangerous. At the beginning, Michael's distance feels moral. He seems to be the son who escaped. The one who can love his family without becoming them. He tells Kay enough to shock her, but not enough to reveal everything. He smiles at the old customs, but he is not ruled by them. He watches the machinery of his father's world with the calm of someone who believes he is only a visitor. But the story quietly plants a terrifying question. What if Michael is not outside the family because he is weaker than them? What if he is outside because he is the only one strong enough to return on his own terms? For now, the empire belongs to Vito. Don Corleone's power rests on balance. He knows which men can be bought, which must be honored, which must be feared, and which should be left alone. He believes in restraint, not because he is gentle, but because he is wise. Violence, to him, is a tool. It must be used carefully. Too much violence invites attention. Too little invites disrespect. This is mafia politics at its most sophisticated. The Don is not merely a criminal. He is a diplomat of the underworld. He manages alliances. He protects income streams. He understands politicians, judges, unions, police, entertainers, gamblers, labor leaders, and killers. He knows that America runs on public rules and private arrangements. But times are changing. The old world of gambling, protection, and influence is being challenged by newer, more aggressive men. Men who see narcotics as the future. Men who do not share Vito's cautious code. Men who believe morality is simply bad accounting. And here the story begins to tighten. Because every empire faces the same test. Can an old king adapt without losing his soul? Vito refuses certain paths not because he is innocent, but because he understands consequences. Drugs, in his mind, invite a different scale of corruption and heat. They endanger political friendships. They stain the family's image. They bring in money too fast, with too much violence behind it. But in the underworld, refusing opportunity can look like weakness. And weakness attracts predators. A rival force begins pressing against the Corleone family. Polite conversations hide knives. Business proposals carry threats inside them. The family must decide whether to move with the new age or stand against it. And in that hesitation, war begins to breathe. The first great rupture comes not as a battlefield charge, but as an attack on the father. Vito Corleone, the man who seemed almost permanent, is struck down in public violence. The impossible happens. The head of the family is wounded. The protector becomes vulnerable. The myth bleeds. And once the myth bleeds, everyone smells it. The family is thrown into crisis. Sonny reacts like fire thrown onto gasoline. He is brave, loyal, physically commanding, and emotionally transparent. He loves hard. He hates quickly. He cannot tolerate disrespect. In another life, Sonny might have been admired as a warrior. In this world, his courage becomes a liability. Because the mafia does not reward the man who feels the most. It rewards the man who reveals the least. Fredo, the middle son, is overwhelmed. His loyalty is real, but his strength collapses under pressure. He is not evil. That is part of his tragedy. He is simply not built for a world that punishes hesitation. In the Corleone family, weakness is not a private flaw. It is a danger to everyone. Tom Hagen, the adopted son and counselor, tries to think strategically. He is intelligent, loyal, practical, and trained to see the machinery beneath the emotion. But even Tom occupies a complicated place. He is family, but not blood. Trusted, but not entirely inside the old Sicilian codes. He represents reason in a world where reason must constantly negotiate with pride. And then there is Michael. At first, he remains the civilian son. The war hero. The one not meant for this. But when his father lies exposed, Michael sees something that changes him forever. He sees that the family's enemies are not only outside. They are inside institutions. Inside police uniforms. Inside the respectable world. The line he once believed separated his father's criminal universe from ordinary American life begins to blur. He discovers that legitimacy can be just another costume. A badge can be rented. A courtroom can be manipulated. A newspaper can be influenced. A politician can smile in public while bargaining in private. This is the moral earthquake that shifts Michael's soul. If the official world is corrupt too, then what makes his father worse? If power everywhere is built on force, loyalty, money, and fear, then perhaps the only real sin is pretending otherwise. This is the psychological trap. Michael does not fall because he loves crime. He falls because he begins to justify it. He tells himself it is temporary, necessary, defensive, personal. He tells himself he is protecting his father. He tells himself he is not becoming the family. He is only doing what must be done. But many tragic transformations begin with those exact words. What must be done? Michael's first decisive step into violence is not loud, not passionate, not impulsive. It is cold. Planned. Surgical. It marks the death of the old Michael more than the death of his enemies. After this point, he can never fully return to Kay's world. He can pretend. He can hide. He can speak softly. But something inside him has crossed a border that has no road back. The genius of the story is that Michael's transformation is not sudden. It is gradual, believable, almost logical. That is what makes it frightening. He does not become a monster overnight. He becomes useful. Then necessary. Then respected. Then feared. Each step has an explanation. Each compromise protects someone. Each act of violence prevents a greater danger. Each lie preserves the family. Until one day, the explanations are no longer tools. They are the architecture of his soul. After the act that changes him, Michael must disappear. He leaves America and enters a kind of exile, not only geographically, but spiritually. In Sicily, he touches the old soil from which his father's world came. He experiences beauty, danger, tradition, and fatalism. The landscape feels ancient, sunlit, and haunted. The villages carry silence like a second language. Men remember insults for generations. Women look from balconies as if history itself is watching. For a brief moment, Michael seems to find another life there. Love appears, delicate and doomed. It is not the modern American love he had with Kay. It is something more mythic, more rooted in blood and secrecy. But peace cannot survive around Michael now. Violence follows him like a scent. And when loss comes, it does not merely hurt him. It hardens him. This is one of the darkest emotional truths in the story. Grief can make a person deeper, but it can also make them colder. Michael's suffering does not open him. It seals him. The young man who once wanted a life outside the family begins to understand the world the way his father did, but without his father's warmth. Vito used power to create shelter. Michael will use power to create control. There is a difference. Back in America, the Corleone family is still bleeding through a war of nerves, bullets, negotiations, and betrayals. Sonny's fury drives him toward a devastating end. His death is not merely the fall of a brother. It is the collapse of one possible future for the family. Sonny could never have ruled for long, but he embodied the family's raw emotional force. When he is destroyed, the Corleones lose their heat. What remains is ice. Vito, recovering but diminished, understands what has happened. He has lost a son to the life he built. This is the punishment hidden inside his empire. He created a world to protect his family from humiliation and helplessness, but that world demands sacrifices. The enemies who feared him now have touched his blood. The business he controlled has entered his home. No empire can promise safety forever. It can only decide who pays for the illusion. Vito chooses peace, or at least the appearance of it. He negotiates. He absorbs insult. He speaks of ending the war. He understands that revenge can become a luxury too expensive even for powerful men. He wants Michael brought home safely. He wants survival. But survival is not the same as forgiveness. And Michael is learning. When Michael returns, he is no longer the son who sat apart at the wedding. He is quieter than before, but the quiet has changed. Before, his silence was distance. Now, it is calculation. He begins to move into the center of the family. Slowly. Deliberately. Those around him may underestimate him because they remember who he used to be. That is their mistake. The most dangerous people are often those who have been underestimated for years. They have had time to watch. Time to learn everyone's vanity, weakness, rhythm, and blind spot. Michael has watched Sonny's temper destroy him. He has watched Frito's softness expose him. He has watched Tom's intelligence reach its limits. And he has watched Vito's old-world wisdom hold an empire together through personality, favors, and restraint. Now Michael will build something else. A cleaner machine. Less sentimental. More centralized. More absolute. This is where the story becomes not just a mafia saga, but a study of leadership and moral decay. Vito's power is personal. People come to him because they believe in him, fear him, owe him, love him, or need him. His empire is built like a web of relationships. It is intimate, almost feudal. Michael's power is colder. He understands that personal loyalty matters, but he also sees its weakness. People change. People panic. People betray. Emotion makes men sloppy. Michael's instinct is to remove uncertainty. He does not want to be loved by the underworld. He wants to be obeyed. And obedience is a different religion. Meanwhile, Kay waits for an explanation that will never fully come. Her role in the story is essential because she represents the outside conscience. She is not naive forever. She senses the darkness, questions it, resists it, and yet is drawn into the orbit of the Corleone name. Through her eyes, we see how the family explains itself to outsiders. They call crime business. They call revenge justice. They call silence loyalty. They call fear respect. And perhaps most dangerously, they call control love. Kay's tragedy is not simply that she marries into a criminal family. It is that she loves a man who is disappearing behind a mask, and every time she reaches for him, the mask has become more real than the face. Michael promises legitimacy. He speaks of a future where the family will become clean, respectable, accepted. This promise is important, because it reveals that Michael still understands the moral language of the outside world. He knows what Kay needs to hear. Maybe, at some level, he wants to believe it too. But power has a way of postponing purity. There is always one more enemy to remove. One more threat to neutralize. One more betrayal to answer. One more temporary evil required before the future can become clean. And that future never arrives. The deeper Michael goes, the more the family's internal tensions sharpen. Carlo, Connie's husband, becomes a symbol of another danger, the outsider brought into the family by marriage, close enough to wound, never fully trusted. Connie herself suffers in the private domestic world that the men claim to protect. This is one of the bitter ironies of the story. The Corleone men speak endlessly of family honor, yet the women often endure the emotional cost of that honor in silence. The family is worshipped as sacred, but individual family members are sacrificed when power requires it. That is not love in its pure form. That is dynasty. And dynasty always has victims. As Vito ages, his relationship with Michael deepens into one of the most complex father-son bonds in modern crime fiction. Vito did not want this life for Michael. That matters. He wanted his youngest son to enter the legitimate world, to hold public office, to command respect without secrecy. In Michael, Vito saw the possibility of redemption. Not moral redemption for himself, perhaps, but social redemption for the family name. A son who could walk in daylight. A son who would not need whispered meetings. A son who could be powerful without being hunted. But destiny is cruelest when it gives a father the opposite of his dream. Michael becomes the heir not because Vito planned it, but because violence rearranges the family. The son who was supposed to escape becomes the son best suited to rule. And Vito, wise enough to see the truth, begins teaching him. These scenes of instruction are not merely strategic. They are elegiac. An old king showing a young king where the traps are buried. How enemies signal friendship. How negotiations hide murder. How men smile before betrayal. How the person who brings a message of peace may be carrying the scent of death. Vito gives Michael the knowledge of survival. But knowledge is never innocent. Once Michael receives it, he becomes responsible for what he does with it. And what he does is terrifying. The final movement of the story builds like a storm behind closed curtains. Michael appears calm. The family's enemies believe he is inexperienced. Some think the Corleones are weakening. Others assume the old empire is fading. They see a young man with a soft voice and mistake patience for uncertainty. But Michael is arranging the board. This is the suspense that makes the story endure. The violence is not random. It is prepared like ritual. Every insult, every betrayal, every old debt, every hidden enemy is being measured. Michael does not explode like Sonny. He waits until the moment when all his enemies believe they understand him. Then he teaches them they never did. The climax is not just about revenge. It is about coronation. Michael eliminates threats with a precision that feels less like anger and more like architecture. The family's rivals are struck. Old betrayals are answered. Loose ends are cut. And the private transformation that began with one act of violence now becomes public fact. Michael is no longer becoming the Godfather. He has arrived. But the cost is devastating. Because to become powerful in this world, Michael must destroy the part of himself that might have lived outside it. He must lie not only to police, politicians, and enemies. He must lie to his wife. He must lie inside his own home. He must allow the people closest to him to feel the door closing. And the door does close. That image, emotionally, is the soul of the story. A separation between the inner room and the outer life. Between men who know and women who suspect. Between power and innocence. Between family as love and family as institution. Between Michael the husband and Michael the Don. The tragedy is not that Michael loses. The tragedy is that he wins. He secures power. He protects the empire. He avenges wrongs. He commands respect. He becomes everything the family needs him to be. And in doing so, he becomes someone who can never again be fully loved without fear. This is why The Godfather remains so powerful decades after its publication. It understands that the hunger for power is rarely advertised as hunger. It disguises itself as duty. It dresses itself in family obligation. It speaks softly about protection, survival, respect, and tradition. It claims to be temporary. It claims to be necessary. But power changes the hand that holds it. At first, a man uses power to defend what he loves. Then he uses what he loves to defend his power. That reversal is almost invisible while it is happening. By the time anyone notices, the man has already changed. Vito Corleone and Michael Corleone are often compared as rulers, but the deeper contrast is spiritual. Vito has lived long enough to understand limits. He knows that power must be masked by generosity. He knows that cruelty should never become vanity. He knows that a man who cannot control himself cannot control an empire. Michael learns these lessons, but filters them through a colder age. He inherits the intelligence without fully inheriting the warmth. He inherits the discipline without the same patience for human weakness. He inherits the family, but the family he preserves becomes more isolated, more fearful, more trapped inside its own legend. Vito's world feels old, smoky, communal, built around tables, handshakes, neighborhood memory. Michael's world feels modern, strategic, and lonely. That loneliness is the real throne. The book also forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about justice. When the legal system fails, what do people seek? When courts protect the powerful, when money bends outcomes, when victims are humiliated by procedure, the temptation of private justice becomes seductive. Don Corleone's world grows in the cracks of public failure. He is not merely a criminal imposing himself on society. He is also a symptom of society's hypocrisy.